Hello everybody and welcome to my yard. We're outside today because it is beautiful and it hasn't started raining yet. Now, I had made a post, for everyone to drop their requests and see, what they wanted me to read on today, and everyone was really grateful for all the political readings that I've been doing lately, and I'm really glad. I do enjoy doing all of that stuff for you guys too. But this time, I had a bunch of requests for David Bowie, and honestly, yes, I love his music. I mean, some people are probably like, you're too young, you're only 23, you're too young for him, but like really, one of my older sisters loved David Bowie, and she still does. And I remember being like 13, 14 thinking, oh my gosh, she's so cool for liking him. And then I actually started listening to his music and I'm like, oh, I actually enjoyed this a lot. So I am happy to read on David Bowie for y'all today. Some people wanted to know how he's adjusting to life on the other side. He passed away a couple of years ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago now, which is really sad, but I guess it was for the best for him. And yeah, people want to know how he's adjusting to life on the other side, and I kind of want to know how he felt about life on Earth now that he's had time to adjust to the spiritual side, and now that he's being filled with his all-consuming love and light. And I believe that when we pass away and we go to the other side, we gain a different perspective. We see our earth lives in a very different way. We understand things a lot better. So stick around. I'm going to just readjust myself here and we'll get reading on it. I also brought a gorgeous amethyst outside. I'm keeping it in the shade though. Apparently sunlight can be damaging on the amethyst, can make it fade out, but thought I'd bring that beautiful crystal outside to help, give us a little bit of clarity, help me to open up to what Spirit is trying to tell me. And I now call upon angels to surround and to guide us while we read on David Bowie. And if he is listening right now and is willing to answer our questions and talk to us through the cards, I would appreciate it, and I'm really grateful for the chance we have to connect with him today. All right, so let's take a look at life on Earth. Ooh, I feel like he's kind of like tuned in. He's now my thing about me and mediumship is I'm still really new to it, so but I am able to tell you is that I feel a presence just over on this side of me, and I'm hearing, I don't know if I'm going to be really good at imitating his voice, but like, I'm hearing his voice in my ear. Okay, no, I can't imitate his voice, but I'm like hearing his voice in my mind's ear. He's got his British accent, kind of a higher pitched, very soft. He's speaking very softly. All right, get on with it, he's saying, get on with it. All right. But he's not being rude, he's just giggling. He's just finding it so funny, my reaction to him coming through and connecting. Oh, that's hilarious. Okay, well then, let's take a look at your life on Earth. And I think what I'm gonna do is what I've been doing for my last bunch of spreads lately. Instead of reading one at a time like I used to do, I am now going to lay down a bunch and then, show you and explain them. So, David Bowie, your life on Earth. Please talk to me through these cards and through my intuition. Talk into my mind's ears. If you're able to send me images into my head, every little bit will help us. Hang on, y'all. Okay, and already there's so much interesting stuff already. So I'm gonna show us the first two. Oh, my hair is tickling my face. All right, I'm gonna show us the first two. So what's at the center of the life of David Robert Jones? We have the Emperor. He was always the master of his fate. He was always subject to his own choices and his own consequences. This is just telling me that the Emperor, like, he was the emperor of his own life. This was just overall, right? So, yeah, the phrase I'm hearing is the master of my fate. He was living his life on his own terms. And I think that is something that goes beyond just the physical life circumstances he had, you know, growing up and while he was here on Earth. This was a soul thing. And we notice that the Emperor is a major arcana. That the major arcana can refer to like our soul lessons and plans, grand scale. Whereas the minor arcana is more day to day, right? But when he came here, he had these plans, and he knew something that he was allowed to remember when he incarnated here was that he was in charge. If, you know, sometimes he'd be subject to other people's stuff, but he knew ultimately that he was responsible for his reactions, he was responsible for his choices, he was responsible for his everything that he did. The crossing energy and the challenge. Here we have a bit of confusion. So while he was completely aware that he was the master of his universe, there was also a bit of confusion, because when we come to Earth, there is stuff that we forget. We're supposed to forget because the point is for us to remember it. So there were times in his life where he's like, why is this happening? Why is this happening? I didn't choose this. I didn't choose that. And while he did innately know that he was responsible for him, obviously because we're human, we're not perfect, there were times where he would forget about that. Forget that, oh, this is all part of the plan. And, you know, it's up to me to choose what I do with what has been happening. There's a lot of stuff in his life he's telling me. He said a lot of, why is this happening? There was a lot of stuff that he didn't know why it was happening, but he just went with it. And, I mean, maybe a lot of confusion about who he was, too. And we'll get to that, I think, in just a minute. But we know that he had all of these different personas, and he went through so many different phases, you know. There was him when he just had like his regular hair and his regular clothing, and or maybe his like rock star clothes, he'd go on stage. And then there was a while where he was Ziggy Stardust, and he had the red hair, and he had the lightning bolt, and he had all of this makeup and really flamboyant costumes and stuff. And then there were times where he had toned it down and was being somebody, I don't know how to explain that. How do we explain this? No, putting on a different persona. He put on many different personas, different costumes, different masks and stuff. And he went through so many changes and phases in his lifetime. And that is something that, this was part of his lifetime. This was something that was kind of in his soul plan. Something that he had incarnated here to do was to be able to remember who he was as a being, as an energetic life force, as a spiritual being. So it didn't matter which different persona he was. On the very inside of his heart, he was still, I guess, trying to be in touch with, I guess, his real self. It goes beyond the David Robert Jones identity that he was born as. It's like how we have our earthly identities. Like, for instance, I'm Sienna Rose. I am a Canadian girl. I'm Tara Ritter. Or, you know, like, I do this and this for a day job, or I do this and this, or I look like this, and my family are these people and stuff. Beyond that, beyond those forms of identification, something he needed to learn, even though it was so confusing to him at times, was to remember who he was. And it was just like, you can put on, he's telling me a lesson I learned was, you can put on any mask, you could put on any costume, you could put on any persona, but you will still be you. And I was always me, and I had to remember who I was. Now, what was something that was on his mind a lot? Well, we have his success, and we have his work. I get the feeling that this goes beyond the music industry, that when he was young, when he was like, well, from the time he was a child to before he even got into the music industry, he was a hard worker. He did what he needed to do to, well, I guess, to survive and thrive, to support family, to support himself. But what he thought about all the time, his work. And you know what? Yes, his money and his success. He says, I enjoyed that too. I enjoyed the money and the fame and the success. He really, really fed off of it. It was almost like a life force supplement to him. It gave him so much energy, knowing that he's saying, I could create anything I wanted and they would consume it. And it doesn't mean that he would create poor quality music just because he knew it would still make him a quick buck. He didn't go that far, but he enjoyed that he could be himself and he could create what he wanted to create. And it didn't matter if lots of other people liked it or agreed with it, he's saying to me, or even understood it. It didn't matter if people agreed with him or understood him. What he really enjoyed was that he could make his living. He could live his dream. He could finance the life he wanted to live by just being himself and creating what he felt in his heart he needed to create. And I find that really cool. I find that really amazing. And now I pulled 3 for his earlier life. He's telling me that, he says, you can ask about my childhood if you want, but that's not what I'm telling you about with these 3 cards that I had just pulled. This is telling me when he was a young man and he was just breaking into the industry. He was discovered. He was given an opportunity to create something. This, I think, was the opportunity to sign on to a record label, an opportunity to perform and make more money doing what he enjoyed, which was creating music. The fame came very quickly. The fame came much quicker than he ever expected it to come. As a result, he just had to take it and run with it. He had to roll with it. Irrational decisions, as I just heard he said, as a result, I made some irrational decisions. There were times he said he went ballistic, he went bananas with the partying. He said sometimes he used more drugs than he probably should have. He's chuckling to himself though, he's laughing. He's like, looking back on it, I had a great time at that time, but looking back on it, it's like, ooh, there were times where he could have put himself in real danger. But, well, and we'll get to that also in a minute, just because of how willing he was to take this up and run with it. How willing he was to take up an idea, not just when he got into the business, but even after, when he was creating albums and going on tour and stuff, just his willingness to have an idea and his ability to, I'm getting the image of him like pulling an idea out of his brain, molding it and forming it like clay almost into what he wanted it to be, and then taking this creation and putting it out there and just running with it, creating albums and amazing concerts, and the energy and the charisma he had. He was very wholehearted. There were times where he didn't feel well, so there were some performances where he says he could have done better, he could have tried harder, he could have been more sincere, but for the most part, everything he did creatively, he did it with his whole heart and his whole soul. And he admires, he says, this earthly identity, this David Robert Jones identity that he had. He admires that. To him, he says that's a character. David Robert Jones was like almost like another persona to him, to his soul anyways. And he really admired that particular incarnation of his soul was not afraid to put himself out there and was not afraid to create what he felt he was being called to create. Okay, we're gonna take a look at, I guess we'll do this, the end of his life. And this is where things get a little bit sadder because, the physical body doesn't last forever. We pass away from any number of causes on Earth, and that's just the way it has to go. Anyways, this was the defeat. Now, he had cancer and he had passed away, and this is representing when he learned it was terminal. When he got the diagnosis that it was cancer, he was very hopeful that he would pull through and that he would be able to keep creating art. Maybe he thought to himself, I need to just listen. I'm getting ahead of myself. Okay. He's saying to me, I thought that, I would get the treatment I needed, that this would pass. And I knew I would be tired. I was getting to be an old man. And I think he was only 69, 70. I mean, oldish, but not like 90, not like nursing home old. And he said he was at first really not expecting it to go this way. He thought he would get better. And he's saying to me, like, I knew I would not be doing as many tours, I would not be doing as many performances and concerts and live things, but he wanted to keep creating albums after Black Star. He wanted to keep creating music, even if it meant writing songs for other artists, because I think he did quite a bit of that too, but just being able to keep being creative and being able to work around his physical body being worn out. But that's not how it happened. It was like, he thought he would get better, but when he learned, like, no, this is way more serious than we thought it was. You need to start getting your legal affairs in order if they aren't already. It was devastating when he realized that this was likely how he was going to pass away. It was devastating to him, and there was a level of acceptance, but it didn't make it any easier. Meanwhile, we have the tiredness. It was getting to be too much. The cancer treatments were getting to be way too hard on his body, and just the later and later into treatment and into his illness, the more intense things got. The treatments were pretty intense. He says to me, the treatments were very intense. He was not prepared for how sick he was going to be. he felt like he was invincible. He felt like he was invincible. The energy I'm feeling at the time was the same sort of gusto and the same confidence, the same like, I can do this, I can get through this. The same kind of energy he put out when he had his Ziggy Stardust persona. He still felt that on the inside when he was going through his treatments. And he tried and tried and tried to get better. We have the Page of Cups. That's like some good news. He got some good news. I'm wondering, well, because right after that we have like, here's the real fight again. So I wonder if some of the good news was, maybe this was when he thought he was getting better. Maybe the treatments were helping for a little bit, and maybe he did get a little bit better, and to him that was great and dandy. But that ended up not being the case, and then the real fight for his life began. So at what point, well, there's one on the bottom, I feel like it's relevant, I'm gonna just leave it out. At what point did you come to accept that this was gonna be your earthly cause of death in this incarnation? Because everybody is gonna die, and everybody's gonna have, you know, it's in some way or another. How did you come to accept it? All right, well, the devil, it was really hard. It was really hard. The devil is also just referring to the cancer in his body. It's referring to the anguish, so the physical illness and the mental anguish, and just the more tired he got. He said his brain was starting to slip. It was getting hard for him to remember things. A lot of it was because of the medications that he had been on. And towards the end, they were giving, I just get the impression they were giving him painkillers to keep him comfortable, and it messed with his cognitive functioning. However, he accepted it because this was the truth. He didn't want to accept it, you know, like when I said he fought really hard and he thought he would get better and stuff. I just get the feeling that it dawned on him during a particularly rough moment of suffering. He was really, really sick. He was laying in his bed, and he was too weak to move, and it just kind of dawned on him, like, this is okay. Because here we have the wish come true. He had not only done everything that he had wanted to do in his life, but he also had a beautiful family. He had his children. He loved his wife, Iman. He not only the material stuff, not just his work in music and not just his work as an artist that was fulfilling to him. He realized that he had all of the love that he could ever, well, need and want. Honestly, to him, it was like he had more love than he ever thought he would have on earth. He realized that his life was fulfilled. And he fulfilled a lot of his roles, and he fulfilled a lot of his purpose, and that is what led him to accept, okay, I'm going to die. On the bottom of the deck, we had Judgment. And he's laughing, and he's making me laugh. He said, Judgment just was, sorry, I'm rubbing all the dirt and grass off my legs. Judgment was just part of the territory for him. I mean, how many people looked at his Ziggy Stardust makeup and persona and went, what the F are you thinking? And, you know, of course, back then there were people who were so into it and thought this was freaking awesome. And then he's saying to me it didn't matter which persona he'd put on. And it doesn't matter what you do. He says this applies to everybody, not just the people who are famous, not just people who are known for the things that they create. There was always support and love, but there was always judgment. And he was able to, another thing in his life, he says, another bunch of lessons and stuff that he learned in this incarnation was that he learned how to handle judgment, and he learned how to let it roll off his back, and he learned how to not let it just take over his whole being. He felt insecurities, and we know that there were a lot of times in his life where he felt confused. Why is this happening? Who am I? And things like that. But he did learn how to deal with it and learn how to roll with it. And my last 3 cards, what's at the root of him, at the root of who he is? Divine prosperity. This is not just his earthly success. Divine prosperity. This was something he was just blessed with this incarnation. Growing up, things were a lot different than, like, before he got famous, of course, but now this is not something he was meant to remember when he was born here, but something that he would remember, something that he would come to learn, is that he was blessed with the ability to just create this prosperity. He was blessed with, I don't want to say having an easier time choosing the reality that he wanted, but he was a lot more aware than some people are. All right. This is taking things, well, actually, okay, and how he took his success and ran with it. He would have an idea, he'd mold it into something tangible, and then just go with it. That is just part of his soul, and a lot of his challenges on Earth did come from acting too quickly sometimes, and then there were some times where he made decisions and didn't realize how they would impact other people. But nonetheless, it was very much like, go, go, go. It's like one of the last things, well, okay, I don't want to say the last things, but you know, before he was born, during that birthing process, right before he entered the physical world, one of the last things, I'm just getting an angel giving him a push, saying, go. And not only was it a command, it was just sort of telling his story. That the universe, the divine, always had his back. And allowed him to make mistakes and stuff. It was just all part of the process. And this is the victory that he had grown into in his life, that he created for himself and was able to accept and live in. All right, and I'm feeling like we're all done here for now. If there are, you know what, any like celebrity readings, any mediumship or celebrity mediumship, any readings like that, just drop me a suggestion. You can leave your suggestions at the bottom of any of my readings, doesn't matter what type of reading it is, or in the comment section of my community posts. I do have Twitter now. I don't know how much I will use it, but if you're using Twitter and you see me on there and you want to throw a reading suggestion my way, just at me. I don't know if that's the term, but you know. And yeah, so thank you so much to you guys for suggesting this topic. I really had fun with this, hence our half-hour runtime. Thank you to the angels and the loving light beings that are surrounding us and protecting us. And thank you to David Robert Jones, or David Bowie. What do you want me to refer you as? He says, call me anything you want. I still know who you're talking to. He's got a beautiful sense of humor. Beautiful sense of humor. I don't know how else to describe that. Just very joyful. I had so much fun connecting with him. And yeah, I'll see you guys next video.